I want to read you an excerpt from a novel that was just published called The Mental Traveler. I'll try to give you a sense of the context. It's set, the scene we're going to experience is set in December 1969. It's a little after the infamous anti-Woodstock concert at Alta, where the protagonist has ingested certain substances and it has altered his consciousness in a certain way. And unlike most such experiences, he doesn't come down from the trip. And this is the launching for about a 6-month episode in and out of various institutions, the first of which is San Francisco City Prison. So the chapters, the book is built out of episodes, and this one is called Barred Behind Bars. Something was wrong with this scenario. They couldn't really be arresting me. I hadn't done anything. I was not Franz K. or Joseph K., but Stephen K. And this was not Prague or Budapest or any other nightmare police state capital, but San Francisco, most liberal of cities. The social torments of the 60s were giving way to a new, improved decade of drug-induced understanding, musical union, and peaceful harmonization of diversity. I was a composer of this cultural future, the furthest thing from a criminal. And yet, these uniforms surrounding me, the institutional indifference of the men inside them, the naked harshness of the room's hard surfaces under the glare of unforgiving lights, told me I could be mistaken. Maybe I'd wandered into an alternate universe where poets, like Shelley's unacknowledged legislators, were cops. Or this could be an elaborate charade, a skillfully improvised mask of poet actors whose purpose was to induct me into their ranks. My brief career as a fraternity boy, or for that matter as a graduate student, had taught me that in order to enter any exclusive group you had to be hazed, subjected to absurd rituals, a process of humiliation that bonded you to your colleagues. The guys behind these typewriters, desk sergeants or whatever, might actually be banging out celebratory verses to welcome me into their club. I was getting tired of the aggravation of not knowing what was going on, but if this was the price I had to pay, okay. Seated alone on a wooden bench, instructed by one of my keepers to wait there, I surveyed the room, observing that but for the uniforms, this was pretty much like any generic office, an English department message center, insurance agency, or other administrative command post. An infinite number of interchangeable bureaucratic monkeys, or in this case pigs, running the over-paperwork engines of civilization. Enough of them sooner or later might compose the works of Shakespeare, or Bacon, or whomever. Ghostwriters. They had to keep at it. Replacements had to be recruited constantly to boost their numbers and improve the odds of coming up with a masterpiece. That's why they needed me. Shakespeare, of course, was a figure of speech, saber-rattling for dramatic effect. Innovative peers could shake free swords or lances into spades, digging up traditions to overturn them, planting new seeds, dealing new hands, cultivating creative gambles. This was the world I wanted to help invent. Even a place like this, whatever it was, could yield and be redeemed by imagination. An officer came over and escorted me to the door, same one I'd come in, opening on the garage. I was given a hand into the back of a paddy wagon, took a seat on one of the benches, and soon was joined by another guest prisoner poet, a middle-aged gentleman, evidently drunk, who didn't fit any visionary profile or remotely heroic image I might have hoped to see across from me as the doors thumped shut. He was surly, dirty, and he stank, cheap booze on his breath and body, mumbling unintelligible protests in the dimness of the van as we pulled out into the street. This wasn't the kind of companionship I was seeking. I had no desire to team up with anyone who couldn't maintain. I might have been stoned or tripped out or otherwise high on precisely what substances I wasn't sure, but at least I wasn't a stumbling, blubbering slob. I wanted to conserve some dignity, some poise, to prove I was worthy of release from this deepening abduction. I wanted out, into what I didn't know. But facing my fellow passenger, I had serious misgivings about where we were being taken and what would happen when we got there. After a painfully protracted ride, we entered another underground garage. The doors of the van were opened. Our escorts hustled us into an elevator. We rode up 6 or 7 floors and stepped out into another administrative staging area, more stark and secure than the previous one. Pale yellowish-white walls, no windows, larger, doors leading off in different dimensions maybe, as in a Borges story or an Escher print. I envisioned Möbius staircases and labyrinthine corridors twisting through the building and back again, going nowhere. I felt like a cat being taken to the vet for an unknown operation. The fluorescent lighting was relentless, the walls and counters cruelly linear, rigid. Only the irregular clackety-clack of typewriters varied the sterile rhythm of straight lines and slamming doors. One of the cops at one of these machines, a corpulent fellow with curly dark hair and ruddy cheeks, resembled Dylan Thomas. Maybe I'd died and gone to poetry hell. Maybe my partner in the paddy wagon, now standing just down the counter, was a poorly reconstituted Kerouac. Could I already be joining the immortals? Was this the deeper meaning of being booked? An officer ordered me to empty my pockets on the countertop. My stuff was scooped into an envelope and taken away. I was led through a door, down a corridor, around a corner, another corridor, another corner. It was an Escher print, a Borges story, or possibly Poe. Mazes of steel bars, locked doors, dungeons, echoing surfaces, musical keys opening and closing bolts and latches. Off in the distance, typewriters, indistinguishable voices, an odd smell of stale paint and belched air, sweat and metal. We stopped in front of a large cell, benches around the periphery, 8 or 10 men inside, some seated on the benches, some curled on the floor asleep or trying to sleep. Mostly older guys, winos I guess, and one young long hair. And over in the corner, crouching, a Mexican-looking dude, resembling a mixture of my brother Hank, Bob Dylan, and Cantinflas, who seemed to be trying to disappear, become invisible. Rattling his keys, my escort unlocked the door and motioned me into the cell. I stepped over a puddle of vomit near the face of one of the drunks unconscious on the floor and took a seat beside the other hippie, hoping to form an alliance. He seemed at least relatively sober compared to most of our other cellmates. Shyly, subtly, we nodded, the slightest acknowledging glance, sort of like meeting Norm at Altamont. How the hell did I get here from there? What is this? I asked him, almost whispering. Where are we? Hall of Justice, City Prison. What are you in for? I don't know. Are you sure this isn't staged? Are you a poet? Huh? Staged? He looked at me as if to ask, what are you on? Then he reflected for a few seconds. Yeah, well, I write songs sometimes, so what? One of the drunks on the floor woke up and started groaning loudly. Struggling to set himself half upright, his elbow propped against the bench, he let loose a torrent of profanity directed at no one in particular, but loud enough to dominate the scene. The old fart was fucked up, knew it, and wanted everyone else to know he didn't appreciate how he was being treated. Motherfucking shithole cocksuckers, I want some respect, goddammit. How the goddamn fuck am I ever gonna get home if you don't let me out of here? Asshole, prick-faced cunt lickers, little cop shits, give you pukeheads keys and you think you're God. Jesus fuck. Little as I liked his style, I had to agree. The pukeheads with the keys were in control. I turned back to my benchmate. Well, maybe it's Poets Theater, initiation night. Everyone has to go through this ordeal. If you can take it, you've made it. You're in. Listen, man, he shrugged, a spooked look flickering in his eyes. You're too far out for me. No, it makes sense, like that old fuck over there. I nodded toward the loudmouth. He could be Charles Bukowski or Robert Bly on a bad night, having to go through hazing over and over. That's why he's so pissed off. It's the price they pay for inspiration. This is all a dream, but it's everybody's. Maybe we're all home asleep having a nightmare. How do I know? Didn't Borges say that when you dream, you're awake in another dimension? The waking world and the dream world are just complementary sides of the same reality? What's so far out about that? Don't fuck with my head, man. This place is freaky enough already. This is jail. Get hip. But what would I be doing in jail? There had to be some other explanation. I mean, yes, on one level it seemed like jail. Totally authentic. But something else must be happening as well. Maybe the Hall of Justice had been captured by acid commandos and converted into a psychic research facility, testing the advanced for endurance to extreme situations. Boot camp for shock troops, the snake pit treatment. How much can you stand? All right, I'm game. If these guys can take it, I can too. Unless it gets too much worse. Thank you.